So I just want to welcome you all today to our February 23, oh, it's amazing, 2023 already, meeting of the District 23 think tank. Zonta says now think tank. I'll put the slides on to keep me on track. I'll just put the share screen on. And hopefully we will see how we are going. Right, I just want to put that over there a bit. Just moving my screens around so I can see everybody easily and not be too messed up. Right. Okay, so today, you're on there. Where are we going here? There we go. Right, so today, as usual, please say hello in the chat line and indicate where you're from, what the countries that you're coming from. And I just open my chat line here so I can see. Hi Joe. Hi Joe. You're first off the mark from Bunbury. That's fantastic. I told you I'm catching up with myself. And so I thought the theme for this month would be quite useful to talk about burning issues and play on words a bit with bushfires, etc. So I want to focus on bushfires, and then we'll go through some other burning issues for 2023, and then cover our normal international district club and other business. So, as you're all aware, Zonta Says Now is looking at at breaking the chain of events that lead to gender inequality caused by climate change. Increased greenhouse gas emissions cause global warming, triggering extreme weather events, that these lead to social disruption that magnify any existing inequalities, including gender inequality. And so we're trying to stop the train by taking climate action and closing the gender gap. And we're creating a gender equal sustainable world by educating girls, advocating for women's rights, and inspiring more female leaders. We have a website, a think tank, and a framework for action. And we do have lots of resources on our website. Just check, wasn't someone else coming in? Just let Bev in. And so, as usual, at the beginning of each meeting, we acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands of the places that we meet from today, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Given the theme of bushfires, I thought it would be really nice to acknowledge an Indigenous female leader who set up the first Indigenous all-women's fire crew in Australia. And she's from Victoria, so in District 23. And I thought she was really nice, and I'm going to see if this works. So let me know if you can hear the sound. I'll just put my sound on here. Sound, right, if this works. No, is it going to work? Where'd you go?
My name is Charmaine Sellings. I studied Cultural Heritage Cert 4 at La Trobe University. I started the Lake Tyers Trust CFA 21 years ago due to a lot of fires that were happening out here. I asked the police and CFA if we started our own crew, would they be willing to train us? And they said yes. Around here, there's a lot of significant places. We've had an archaeologist down doing some work on a project for us, doing test pits and that, looking at different scatters, looking at scarred trees and stuff like that. Well, with the cultural heritage knowledge, like scarred trees, for instance, we don't want them cut down. If they accidentally get cut down through CFA or through fires, we look at ways to preserve them and look after them still. With scatters and midden sites, we prefer the trucks to go around them. I actually stood in front of one of the trucks and said, no, you go around. So they had no choice but to go around. Then I explained that in that one side, one test pit there in the ground, there's 179 artefacts that we don't want demolished. at Latrobe. We were all one as a family and we always looked after one another's backs. You do test pits and you might uncover a bone that you know might be human or might be kangaroo. You've got to determine the difference between them. I'm a person that can juggle, work extra hours, which is fine by me. I love working. I had a great support network. My dad was the one that encouraged me to do what I want to do. And so I've never had that challenge to do what I want to do. Except for one, and that's racism out in the wider world. And that's the only challenge that I've got. I stick up for my crew members in the CFA. The other day we had a cool burn, which was a cultural burn. It was joint managed. There was a few white people there. We all got on well. We enjoyed it. They got smacked at it. It was a lot better than what they done. So they understood why we understand fire a lot better. So it was a really good cultural burn. The ability to do stuff for the community and to know that I am there for them, that's what motivates me. I want to teach the younger generation, go for your dreams. Go for your dreams. If you can't get the one you really want, go for the next best thing.
Wasn't she interesting?
Yeah. Yes.
So often we don't get to see we just name the people, but we don't get that profile of get to see the women that we're honouring as real people. And I just loved that video. I thought she was brilliant. Anyway, with our focus on bushfires, this was stimulated, this idea, from an email from Sue. Sue, would you like to just share a bit about Oscar?
So, hold on. You can hear me? Okay. Oscar is my great nephew, and he actually lives in Spain. And he came to Australia over Christmas, and his mother's Australian, so he has Australian citizenship, and he's very interested in Australia and what happens here. And he has a very good teacher, and the teacher gave them a project to think about climate change. And Oscar did his project in the form of a poem on bushfires, and particularly with an interest in Australia. And I suppose why I sent it to Carol was when I heard about it and Oscar read it to me, I was blown away. Like it's such an inspiration from a younger generation of how they're thinking. And not only Oscar at 11, but also his teachers. I mean, they're obviously instilling some of these thoughts into the kids. So we've got sort of two generations here who are doing fantastic stuff. So I'll let you listen to it and see what you think yourself.
Hi, my name is Oscar Garcia Luther, and I would like to read you the poem that I wrote called One Word, Act. Dear future change makers, I ask you a question when it comes to wildfires. Are they normal? Are they what they used to be? If you agree, I urge you to talk to the people that are hurt, people that have fought fire, but most of all the wildlife on the trees that sit on the leaves get burnt because of the breeze hefting the fire through the trees. So many animals have such a good instinct. So why this rapid demise? And why are so many extinct? These fires, unbelievably, are almost 1,200 degrees Celsius. To most living organisms, fire is an enemy and creates so much bad energy. Fire is a destroyer, the employer of pain and panic. You can neglect this, but the truth is, this can be respected and listened to. These diabolical, blazing bright fires aren't just fires. They also lead to other problems like deforestation, leading to domination as cities are more CO2 in the air. It also guides its way to land erosion, destroying houses and hurting people without a care. For many trees around the world, fire is needed for them to regrow. The flames lick and heat the seeds that cling onto the trees. Crack! They open and off they go. For many years, with Mother Nature's knowing hand, fires have been contained. Flora and fauna worked around these fires and were able to be maintained. But in recent years, with heightened summer temperatures, this fine balance is changing. These fierce fires no longer understand their boundaries and keep on raging. These fires aren't just an instruction to stop, but an instruction to change. If not, this destruction will enrage. Is it worth all that can be earned if all that remains is a surplus of trees that have been burnt? Thank you.
Fabulous.
Hi, my name is Oscar Guy.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yes, very good.
Excellent.
He had some amazing turns of phrase in there. I mean, I loved the, fires aren't just an instruction to stop, but an instruction to change.
Yeah.
How old is he, Sue?
He's 11 years old. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of other 11-year-olds out there that probably think exactly the same way too. So it's a great thing for us to know that this is how their mind is working at the moment.
So is he your nephew, did you say?
Yes, he's my husband's niece's son. So yeah, my great nephew.
Right.
That's brilliant. Doesn't it give you confidence from the next generation when they're just so clear thinking and articulate? Brilliant.
Yeah, and an understanding of the balance needed between sort of nature and man, how people figure in it and how nature figures in it. And, previously our stance has basically been about people and, well, nature comes very second. But I think this generation is starting to grow up with the idea that nature is actually really important and it has to be balanced with our needs.
Vicky, you're going to say something?
Susan, are we able to take a copy to our clubs?
Yeah, I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem for Oscar. He was quite thrilled that I asked if I could show it today, so he'd be delighted with that.
Oh, thank you. And I'm delighted with the poem. I think that's very, very perceptive and very, very, what's the word, sort of inspires you to do something about it.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of, it makes you feel like your efforts are sort of worthwhile if they're gradually being passed down to people like this, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Sue, I would love to put that. I'm preparing a newsflash at the moment that should go out next week. I would love to put that in there if you could send it to me.
Yep, I'll do that. Yep, I'll do that today. Right.
Brilliant. And do thank Oscar for sharing it with you.
I will. He'll be thrilled to. I said I'd give him the feedback. So.
Yeah, I think I'm just very, very impressed and wonderful. That's great. Thank you, Sue, for sharing that and raising the issue, and also giving us a theme for this week, today's meeting.
Yes.
I just want to bring you back to the Zonta International Statement on Climate Change and remind you that one of the things it asks government to do is to include women in the formation of disaster preparedness and response plans. And Zonta International calls on members to increase their own awareness of climate change and its gender-related consequences and raise awareness locally. So putting those two things together, I thought, why not? Let's form our own disaster preparedness plans in the areas of bushfires. How are we doing? What are we doing? How progressed are we? And how confident are we in the space? So I know that what brought this to my attention was in September last year, for the first time, we've got nationally consistent Australian fire danger ratings. And I thought it's amazing. It's taken till 2022 to achieve that. So it's a good sign. And so it's just the 4 levels: plan and prepare, take action now, be ready to act, take action now, and the catastrophic one. Every time you see the catastrophic one, it makes your heart jump, doesn't it? You know,
Yes.
so, good work.
Yeah.
Have any of you been evacuated for fires or had the
Yeah, I have.
yeah?
Yeah,
What
up in the hills. Yeah, Adelaide Hills.
Jenny?
Julie Monacivet stayed. She was just up the road. She and
Yeah.
her husband decided to stay, but I evacuated with the dog.
Brilliant. Did you have a bushfire plan?
Yes, we did. But of course, on the day, one of the things that struck me is, what do you do with your gas bottles? And when I've asked the CFA, they don't actually have an answer. Nobody has an answer what to do with your gas bottles, but everything else, we were pretty quick and organised, and it was good. We did have a plan and it worked, but unfortunately the fire didn't come over. But interestingly, Julie Monacivet just up the road, they had a bigger and better plan, and they were very confident that they would get through it. I might admit, if it was super catastrophic, I wouldn't even dream of staying up in the Adelaide Hills. My brother nearly died in a fire a few years ago in his vineyard and lost 40% of it. So, you know, like, don't think you can fight these fires. The heat, the noise, the stress is far too much.
Yeah. So I thought I'd thanks for sharing that. That's very, very useful, Jenny. I went and did a little search around the websites to see what I could find, and I found this site, and I thought, I don't know if any of you may have seen it. It's all about the Australian Disaster Resilience Index, and this actually is uses these 8 categories to assess geographical areas, usually local government areas, on their character, economic capital, emergency services available, the planning of the built environment, community capital, and information access, to identify the coping mechanisms that are available, the capacity to cope. And then they've got the areas on adaptation around social and community engagement and government leadership, to see how quickly a community can pivot. Vicky, is your hand up from the previous question or a new one?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add that, yes, me and my family went through the notorious 67 bushfires in Hobart. The whole of the southeast was on fire, literally a whole range of fires all met up. And my brother, a journalist, was covering one of the fires down the channel, and I nearly lost my brother and his cameraman. They were that close to being killed in the fires. So I find it a struggle sometimes seeing footage on the TV, because I was driving home in the city to my home on a bus and watching houses just either side of the road catch fire, and you don't even know when you get home if your house is going to be there. So it's pretty traumatic.
Wow. Do you have a bushfire plan?
We don't have bush nearby, but as a result of your request,
Yeah.
I did put a little list, my kind of fire plan list. It's not a bushfire plan,
Yeah.
but it is a list that I think would be useful to me should the need arise. Thanks, Carol.
No, that's good. While the conversation today is around bushfires, it's really good to remember that it could be any trigger that causes you to respond and evacuate quickly, and with that added stress. I mean, for us in the cities, in not next to wide expanses of vegetation. It could be an industrial accident in the local area, or
Yes.
you just don't know, you know. So it's always good to think of these things in that context, the wider context. But anyway, this particular website I thought was quite interesting because you can zoom in and see what the capacity is, the capability is for a particular, in particular areas. So that's something that you might want to have a little look at later on. It'll be in the notes, but it's, I spent, you know, an interesting half an hour going through the places and seeing what was there. Anyway, I then went on a trawl to see what happens in various states, what information is available. And I found this one in Tasmania, and that was, you must decide, everyone is really what you're going to do. You're going to stay or you're going to leave. And then they point you in the right direction for what you're doing. So they have a leave early checklist, a stay and defend checklist. And then they also have a community bushfire protection plans. So you get the information which is geographic for your wider community area, which you can use to feed into your own bushfire plan. So I thought that was an interesting move. So in Victoria, I found that you've got the state government had things, as well as the Country Fire Brigade, the Country Fire, is it an association? I think it is, at CFA.
Authority.
Authority, thanks very much. I wasn't sure which one it was. And they had this PDF document, which I thought was quite good for, as a little reference document to work through, which I thought was quite useful.
Carol, just on the Victorian one, after the really catastrophic fires where we lost over 200 people, they changed that about deciding, you know, before it was, you know, prepare, decide whether you're going to stay or leave. And after that, it was all about leaving early.
Right,
Yeah.
different language.
Yeah.
That reflects what you were saying, Jenny, as well, about things being so quick and hard, and as well as Vicky with your experiences. That's very interesting. Thanks for that, Sandra. In South Australia, you can use, they guide you through an online process, then you print out your own plan as a result of that. And in WA, we've got a bushfire plan app, so it's always with you of what you have. But for wider, I also put down New South Wales as similar, with download the guide, put your information in and print it off. And the Queensland have also got a similar thing. So every state and territory is slightly different, and you've got lots of different places to go to. But all of them had their own ideas of what to take with you. So I was going to suggest that in just a bit of fun. Now, Jenny, you've got to put down the things that you forgot to take with you.
Well, we didn't forget the dog. I tell you, the dog was first thing in the car. Ivan had already planned and prepared, and that was part of the bushfire plan, to have all his important documents in one plastic container. So that went in the car, and then it was clothes and whatever.
But we'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to put in their things in the chat line. Sue, you had your hand up. How can I help?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, it is fantastic that there is this information available, but discussions with people, fire danger in terms of buying properties and that seems to not be on their radars very well. And yet, you know, some of the places like Castlemaine in Victoria are really increasing in terms of fire danger and things like that. But it just seems that people are still behind. They seem to think that if they buy a place, then it's their right to have the CFA come and save it, regardless of what else might actually need to be saved in the area. And I just don't think we can keep assuming that.
Yeah, exactly. I was on each of these websites, there were various videos and things that you can watch, and that came through quite a bit on that it's a self-responsibility first. You cannot assume that the fire brigade would be able to get to you, so you've got to take your own actions first. So we've got a few things coming in now, which is great. I put down will and house deeds, but that's because I've been thinking wills recently. But, transistor radio with batteries, a mobile with a power pack, iPhone, iPad chargers, passport, driver's license, other ID, phone, laptop chargers, passport, and if time, a couple of old photo albums. That's
Yes.
always good. We've got legal and financial documents, financial details, wallet and some cash. That's good. So we're collecting quite a few things there, which is good. It's good to get thinking about. Wine, I love that.
I'll tell you the story of that in a second.
Okay, essential documents, yeah. So, and we've already mentioned pets, so as they were mentioned earlier on with their go bag. Okay,
Yes,
Sue, tell us
having
the
a
story.
bag ready for them.
So we live next to a park, and we actually had a fire in the park a few years ago. Somebody deliberately lit it, and the police turned up, and the huge fire engines and the fire helicopter that was around at the time. And so all the neighbours, of course, we all gathered to have a look, and the police said to us, go back and activate your fire plans. And we all looked at each other because, of course, nobody had a fire plan at all. And after this was all over and we settled down, we have a wine cellar that's the envy of the neighbourhood. And so the fire plan, it's like a bunker. The fire plan was that everybody came to the bunker, and I had to keep glasses in the wine cellar. I had to keep corkscrews in the wine cellar. So we could survive for a while down in the wine cellar.
Brilliant.
All the neighbours.
Right, that's great. Oh, Joe, I see you're talking about what the City of Bunbury's got. Emergency ready guide for all emergencies, and includes ready kits. They also say ready go kits. Okay. Do you have one?
I don't have a ready go kit, no, but I have their plan. I have their guide, and it's really good.
Yeah.
They talk about ready kits, ready stay, storing water, get your car ready, people with disabilities, special requirements, pets and livestock, who to contact, and radio stations to listen to. So, and it's from earthquakes to pandemics to floods to storms to fire. It's quite good.
Yeah. That's excellent.
The radio is your best friend on days like that.
Yep.
The local ABC station not only broadcasts centrally, but it lets people call in and they say where the fire is and where it's heading. And if you listen to that, you'll get some really good information.
That's good. Well, in one of the documents that we had a picture with an emergency kit in, which I thought was quite good. So they had the overnight bag and clothes, which is what you were talking about, Jenny, the identification areas, identification papers, medicines. I was reading an international guide recently, and it was saying that one of the things that people forget is their contraceptives. So that's always, they have a little bulge afterwards. The radio, contact information, woolen blankets, and water. So we got quite a few of them there. Medicines and prescriptions, love it, Kay. And but you mentioned the ABC, Jenny, and at the last meeting, I sort of mentioned the emergency website from the ABC, and it had lots of different things for how you can prepare for any of these emergencies. But I had not appreciated that they were in partnership with Red Cross. And so the emergency plans and these ones from Red Cross, I went and dug a little deeper. And this Ready Together toolkit that they have has things in it like getting to know your neighbour. So having these cards that you can print off to go around your neighbourhood to make, they were saying that the first people that help out in an emergency are your neighbours. So you really need to know them. And
that's true, but I'd like to mention that Maggie Gregory, who's up in the Gawler Club, she got caught in a fire, and she was on a no-through road, and they had all decided on a telephone plan if a fire came along. And a fire did come along one day, and the telephone plan was completely ignored. And everybody did different things. Nobody listened to anybody, and so you have to be very careful. If you're going to set up something with your neighbours, you need to know that they're going to do it, and you might test it to see if it actually works, or whether, you know, just like the emergency plan, you don't just all duck under the seats and throw a rug over your head and forget everybody else.
Anyway, I thought it was good to know.
Just one other thing too. I know we live in cities. A lot of us live in cities, but you think Canberra got, you know, large suburbs burnt out when they had the fires in Victoria. Suburbs in Bendigo got burnt out. It
Yes,
got
that's
within
right.
a couple of kilometres of the city centre and one area.
Yes.
So yeah, you know, you're not necessarily safe just because
That's
you're
right. The edges of the cities are now high risk areas, and we need to really, people need to keep that very seriously in mind.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons for raising this today, because we always tend to think that we'll be in our homes when this happens,
Yes.
but we may be staying with people in the country or having visitors with us. And, you know, it's just having that conversation just to trigger what you would do. Anyway, another thing they had was the Create Your Ready plan. And this document here gives you spaces to hold all of these different numbers of different services, the ABC frequency, alternative places to stay in an emergency, your medical plans, your will insurance with all the details of all your insurance companies and reference numbers. And I thought was a good trigger thing. Your animal plan and other important contacts, including people like your solicitor and your consultants and for medical things as well. I thought it was quite comprehensive. But they also mention on this site about their app, which they have, the Get Prepared app. And at the beginning of that app, you can elect your emergency, cyclone, storm, bushfire, etc., and put all your information in. So it covers all sorts of different things. So there's quite a bit out there. They had their Get Packing checklist as well, with all the different pictures of the different things which they had. And you know, scans or copies of the documents. I mean, that's something you can do ahead of time. And even if it's just taking photos of them on your mobile phone, at least it gives you something to have with you. I mean, I worked in the Department of Transport, and we're the Centre for Identity in Western Australia. And when we've had bushfires here, people have lost all their ID, and the department is looking at biometric identification. So as when people have lost everything, they can actually rebuild their identity. So it's a real issue. When it comes to disaster impact, in 2022, there were 46 disasters declared in Australia, 316 local governments areas impacted, 524 disaster support declarations made, and $3.5 billion was paid out by the Australian government on disaster payments, which I thought was quite interesting. That's just last year. But this website by NEMA that was formally established in September this year, I hope it shows. Does this show up? Just making sure you can see it.
Yes, thank you.
On this website, you can actually put in first select disaster or event. So I had a play. I thought, okay, I put in bushfire, select assistant type. I thought, okay, let's go for emotional support. And then I can sort of start typing your address or use the location that's here, okay, and search. And it comes up with where I am, and it shows me all the different services and different places that you can look at. And it was so quick. You know? So I thought that was a really interesting tool to obviously have a good look round and see what you can see with it. But it's they had all sorts of other things in here. They had different stories. That was where I got the impact information from. And they have this map. And this map, you can zoom in on any of the areas, and you can see. Let me just put down to that level. See here, you've got all these different interventions that are happening, different activities, and these cover bushfire recovery funding, local economic recovery funding, preparing communities, flood mitigation, telecommunications funding, and where there's disasters being declared. but you can go all over the country and you can see all the different things that are being done. All that bushfire recovery funding really shows from, 2019 fires. But this is another area where you can sort of really go in and see what's happening. This is where all the money's being spent. And so some things are, you can go onto any of them and you can sort of show you what's happening. Firefighting water supply tank farm, tank farms there. So you can see what's happening in any of the spaces. So it's so you can go to your own local area and see where the money's being spent and what's actually happening. And they tell you little stories about the different places that are happening. So when you go into the stories, like this one was a local authority in Perth that was putting together the Prepare Together project, which is all about informing people better about fires. But there's so many different things that are there, but it's well worth a look. And I never even knew it existed. Did any of you know it existed?
No.
So that's one of the things that we try and achieve with Zonta Says now, is to sort of raise awareness of these different things that are around. Anyway, one thing which they have got funding for, a few $1 million, is to develop a bushfire resilience star rating app. And this app is designed for you to determine how at risk your property is of fire and what things you can do on site with regards to it. It's being piloted in Shoalhaven, I think, somewhere, wherever that is. And it's soon to be rolled out to the wider community. So that will be a nationally available app that will be available probably later in the year or early next year.
Yeah, Shoalhaven was an area burnt out not that long ago, and it's on the south coast of New South Wales.
Excellent. They had I put the thing here. They had a little story about it. So it's I'll show you what it looks.
It's really exciting having the Bushfire Building Council of Australia running a pilot program here in the Shoalhaven. We lost 312 dwellings during the 2019-2020 bushfires, and to us that had a huge impact onto our community.
The Bushfire Resilience Star Rating app is a project funded by the federal government to enable all Australians to understand their local risk. This app utilises new disaster risk information, the building vulnerability information that comes from the homeowner, and then our science-based algorithms calculate how resilient that home is. This really is a world first, where people will be able to receive customised recommendations that measurably improve their resilience.
It was probably one of the most scary times that we've ever experienced, because we knew the fires were coming up the coast. We'd seen these absolutely terrible shots further down south, where the sky was red, there was thick smoke, and we knew that we were right in the pathway.
We're trained RFS volunteers, so we had a lot of experience with fighting bushfires, but we're not guaranteed to be here all of the time. So we see the value as being all about what can we do to improve the chances of this house surviving a bushfire in the instance that we're not here.
It's interesting to be able to look at it and see a number and sort of figure out what you can do with your property. We lost, lots of outbuildings and gardens and fences. Now that we have a clean slate, how we can configure things, how that's going to impact our fire rating in the future should another front come through.
I think being involved in this program has lifted my awareness yet again. Even after those fires, you think you'd be thoroughly aware, but then you start to look around and you think, oh no, if I've got a checklist that I could just go through, that's ideal, because all the thinking's been done. I've just got to do the action.
Not only does it look at the structure of your home, but it also considers the surrounding environment and how that may influence the severity of a fire. I mean, we did a lot that we could, but maybe there were a few things that we could have done better that meant that we could have saved more.
A lot of people, in my experience, don't know the risks. They don't know what they could do to their houses to improve their survivability. Yeah, I'd be recommending it to anybody.
The federal government funded this project to bring all of that science and evidence that we have into the hands of households. So it means that we can translate science into real tangible action. This app could be applied and used worldwide in any country, in any region, and that will be the next phase of this project, sharing the science with the world.
We are really, really grateful to the Bushfire Building Council of Australia for what they have done, not only here for the Shoalhaven, but for what it's going to do moving forward to look at bushfire resilience.
So it was quite interesting to see what an interesting app, isn't it? Quite useful. So I think wherever you are, you can, see how it sort of can help. But so that's something else to look forward to. So now we'll just move on to some burning issues for 2023. There's a lot happening in the world at the moment, and I just want to sort of bring a few things together. I found a few journal articles that just raised a few things for 2023. Jenny Wilson from the World Food Programme points out that 350 million people currently face acute food insecurity worldwide because we've got this climate-driven humanitarian crisis that's happening. And those who did the least are suffering the most, So the 20 countries on the International Rescue Committee's emergency watch list, they contribute together only 2% of global greenhouse emissions, and yet they're suffering the most. It doesn't seem fair, does it? No. And there's Antonio Guterres, from the UN. He's initiating a meeting in September, and a climate action summit with no exceptions and no compromises, because he sees that the promises by various countries are coming woefully short of expectations. And in Dubai, later this year in November, we've got COP28, and we're expecting countries to have far more ambitious commitments to lower their emissions. And they're also trying to work out how to set up that fund for to lower emissions and protect people from loss and damage. In April, we'll know what the 2022's global average temperature was. Currently, it's 1.15 degrees above pre-industrial levels, so we'll see if it's gone up or not. And there's the World Food Programme has initiated trying to find new ways of doing things, and they've got a climate insurance programme for farmers to give them some money back after crop damage. And they've also getting early warning systems for people at risk, so as you've got a bit of a heads up that disaster's about to happen. So that's the World Food Programme. The Washington Post, they're saying a new climate reality, less warming but worse impacts on the planet. So what's going on there? The worst case warming appears less dire. At one stage we were talking about 5 degrees by the end of the century, and now they're saying that things like the solar and wind power is growing so quickly, it's they're having to adjust what their projections were, which is good. So 1.7% of global electricity was solar and wind in 2010, 8.7% of it in 2020. That's globally, that's pretty good. And they're saying that if energy transformations continue and technologies such as carbon sequestration become viable, global models suggest that warming could eventually reverse, bringing temperatures back down close to 1.5 above pre-industrial levels. An awful lot of ifs in there. But at the same time, many nations are failing to take action now, In 1970, 12 million people endured an average temperature of greater than 29 degrees. That global's wrong. But by 2070, it's 3.5 billion. It's amazing. God. That one just struck me. And then research on the flooding in Pakistan that killed 1,500 people and affected 33 million people, leaving millions homeless, suggested that climate change intensified rainfall by 50 to 75%. When we get it hard. Sue, I just noticed your hands up, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was reading this week that electric cars, Tesla 3 sales in Victoria, I think it was, were like the third highest car sales of any car, I think behind a Toyota and something else. But so I thought that's a good sign, really, that people are.
Electric vehicles, yeah, it's all happening. It's all happening, and which is great. And then the risks of the catastrophes remain. Resiliency will depend on the stability of insurance markets, especially in places like Florida, and the security of food and housing in places such as Pakistan. So you can see there's an awful lot of social disruption if people don't have food and a home. And the narrative of don't worry, we're on track for 2 to 3 degrees is seriously overconfident, you know, was the message from them. And the last one was from Megan Roberts, the Director of Policy and Planning at the United Nations Foundation. And she talks about rescuing the Sustainable Development Goals. COVID put us back 4 years on poverty, and 7% of the world will be in poverty by 2030. Ukraine triggered a global food shortage, the poorest were hit most, and food insecurity has doubled since 2019. Poor countries are due to pay 35% more for their debt this year. So they've got the climate change, more in debt, there's so many upheavals going on. In 2022, 57% of women were able to make their own decisions about sexual and reproductive health. That blew me, that one.
Yes, yes.
130 years to close the gender gap. That was the World Economic Forum. And this year in March in Doha, we've got the 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries. They're meeting. In July in New York, there's a high-level political forum where 40 countries will report on how they've achieved their Sustainable Development Goals. And in September, we've got the UN General Assembly, and you've got the Sustainable Development Goals Summit. Now, remember that the Sustainable Development Goals were developed in 2015, and they're to go between 2015 and 2030. And at 2023, we're at the halfway point of the SDGs. So all the countries are having to report, and they have a second global Sustainable Development Goal report coming out mid-year. And there's also UN Women a couple of years ago brought out a project, Generation Equality Forum, and that was all about accelerating gender equality through finance. And so they've got a second forum coming up later in the year. She also, Megan talks about taking stock of an intensifying climate crisis. So this is all UN stuff. And here we've got COP27 in Egypt. They talked about the loss and damage funding, and also the early warning system, which they want to put out to everybody in the world by 2027. And then COP15, which is the Biodiversity Conference of Parties in Montreal, they passed that decision to protect 30% of land and sea by 2030, or the goal to do so. However, emissions are set to rise by 2023, and in COP28 in Dubai, we're having the first global stock take on the Paris Agreement. We'll have to work out the details of the loss and damage, and we're also at the midpoint of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, which is how each country is meeting its obligations under that treaty too. So the other thing she talked about was the fallout from COVID. In high-income countries, 3/4 of the people have been vaccinated with at least 1 dose. And in low-income countries, it's 1 in 3. So 28%, 29%. So the pandemic fund was established for poorer countries. They had a meeting last year, and they're trying to get universal health coverage, will be discussed at the UN in September. When it comes to delivering record levels of humanitarian need, which has been driven by conflict and disaster, these figures, in 2023, 339 million people in 69 countries will need humanitarian assistance. That's 1 in 23 people. An increase of 65 million people compared to the beginning of 2022. And the cost of it, it will cost 51.5 billion, this is US dollars. So a 25% increase compared to the beginning of 2022. This is the thin end of the wedge, you know, what we're seeing at the moment. And the underlying conversation is all around building more inclusive systems for international cooperation, because internationally, countries are becoming more nationalistic, they're closing their borders, tensions are high, there's warmongering going on, cooperation's low. And so the international meetings this year are going to be 10 times more important than ever before. And there's also talk of a summit for the future in 2024 next year. So we just got to try and encourage all countries to collaborate. You know, it's not to pull up the gangplank, but to all to talk to each other. So it sort of painted a bit of a picture. But then, as I do for these meetings, I go down some rabbit holes, and I discovered this. Did you know that there's an organisation called Gender and Disaster Australia?
Nope.
Well, there is. There is. And they focus on evidence-based education, training and resources to address the harmful impacts of gendered expectations in disaster. Now, this is one of the many resources they had on their site. And they say, why gendered fire planning? On Ash Wednesday in 1983, most people died during late evacuations, and the majority of those were women and children, whereas most of the men killed had been defending property. There is evidence of disagreements as the fire approached. In virtually all cases, this was between women who wanted to leave and take the men with them, and men who either wanted to stay and defend or who felt they had to support others in that role. Expectations of heroic masculinity set men up for failure. Bushfire researchers write, societal pressure sees men attempt to perform protective roles when the fire threatens that many have neither the knowledge nor ability to fulfill safely. The kids where the parents fought about leaving, there was trauma afterwards. Women escaped alone or with children, often in terrifying circumstances, or had limited autonomy. I have first-hand knowledge that there are women, wives on Black Sunday, who wanted to leave town, and their husband said, no, we're staying to fight this. And they stayed to fight, and they both died. We never had a fire plan. You thought he'd be here. My fire plan was him. Only 5% of people have a written fire plan. So I thought it was, I just reading that one postcard, it just sent shivers up me, and it made it very real. This is the lived experience of so many people. And I thought, well, it doesn't take long to get your own act together and to see just to prepare for these things. Anyway, so that was a little discussion about giving you a bit of a context of what's going on globally. Is there anything, what are the global issues that you are concerned about?
Oh, where do you start, Carol? Jeez.
Are there things that you're concerned about that we can do something about? Sue, you had your hand up, and then Vicky.
Well, in relation to what we've been talking about today, I feel that somehow maybe you can talk to people through insurance. It's something that governments don't really want to have the conversation about. But if we actually we use insurance economically and say, you know, you literally are going to pay a lot of money to stay in this place, we may deter people from wanting to live in some of these areas. I mean, some of these are beautiful areas and, you know, wonderful to live in, but can we afford as a world to basically keep supporting all these people in these areas? I mean, as you said, there's enormous cost in doing this, and governments just don't continually have the money to keep doing that. So I suppose in relation to what we're talking about today, I think one of the untold discussions is really about insurance and how it should work to actually help the environment.
Vicky, you had your hand up.
I think that what I've been discussing with my family the last sort of like 24 hours really was about the issues of the number of global refugees that are going to be climate change refugees, and that they're going to really impact. And I don't think, even apart from floods, famine, all the other, you know, disasters we've got the sea level rise. It alone will bring out so many more refugees, and I think we need to hammer that home and be prepared for that. And I wondered, is there any, and Kay's here, and Sandra, and yourself, Carol, is there anything we can carry back to Zonta International in terms of the next conference, for instance? Is there anything where we can feel we are making a difference or can do something, rather than just be quite disturbed by the statistics that you mentioned? Thanks.
Yes, I know that some of the studies I've read have indicated up to 1.2 billion people could be displaced by 2050. That's the extreme, but some of them go about 800 million, that sort of space. And it's an area of concern, especially when you're getting so many countries are closing their borders and making it harder for people to they don't want to take in refugees. It's making it harder. And so I think our role is really in advocating in the space and having the conversations that make it safe for politicians to talk about the issues, and help to educate the community, so as there more of a willingness for accepting refugees and realizing what the issue is. What do you think, Kay, Sandra? Any comment? You're both on mute, by the way.
I was going to say Judy's got a hand up, and she's in charge of that conference.
Sorry, Judy.
Hi, hello everyone. Look, Vicky was just mentioning conference, and I'm not sure if you were referring to Convention 2024. You were?
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so certainly wearing my hat as chair of Convention 2024, we're having conversations on an ongoing basis about how we might tackle some of these issues at Convention. And there's a number of things that I would like to suggest that people might want to think about. And one of those is, how we can just do little things to make Convention and our time in Convention in the Convention Centre a little more user-friendly, sustainable, etc. For example, perhaps using reusable water bottles instead of having bottled water on the table, etc. Now, I would certainly be would welcome thoughts and ideas from people. My whole life just about revolves around Convention these days, so I'm on my computer day and night. So any thoughts and ideas, I would welcome those, keeping in mind, of course, that that there may be little subtle things that we can do without going overboard in terms of cost, because we are talking Convention, and any costs that we incur either go back to the to Zontians in their registration fees, or certainly we have to pay for them somewhere along the line. So we're constantly looking at ways of keeping the registration fee down and keeping the Convention sustainable. So that's one thought. The other thing, of course, is that Convention registration won't come out until later this time. We've decided that in the past, Convention registration comes out quite early. We won't be putting it out until early next year, 2024. But what we will be doing is calling for expressions of interest for workshop ideas and for people to submit, ideas for workshop or briefings for workshop, etc., etc. So I think this is a great opportunity for this group and for people in that space. I mean, obviously, Carol will submit something, I'm certain. I've already spoken to her about that, and there will be a focus. But it's very much my intention, where possible, to have Australian speakers, what we are doing in Australia. I mean, this is a golden opportunity for us. It's only the third time in Zonta's 102-3-year history that we've had a convention, an international convention in Australia. So this is our opportunity to showcase the amazing things that we do in Australia. So I just want to leave you with that. In fact, I can't stay much longer because I have got another call coming through. But as I say, I'm sure you've all got my email address, and if not, that's very easy to find on the Zonta International website, or someone will have it. Yeah, just putting the, posing those questions to you and thoughts today to really start working on it.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Fair enough. And thanks, Judy.
Good idea.
That's good. So, so we've got, I think from the insurance point of view, Sue, I think the insurance companies are taking a lead on that because it's getting increasingly more difficult to insure different places. But then you get to the problem of how do you get justice for those people that have lived all their lives in a particular place? They now can no longer afford to insure it, and they can't sell it. And how do they move? How do they move on with their lives?
Yeah, it is a very tricky one. Yeah, it's not going to be an easy problem to solve, but we also, governments just can't keep spending increasingly all their money on natural disasters.
Exactly. So there's got to be a bit of preparedness with planning departments, etc., to where you are, where you can build, etc., where you can put things.
Well, on that matter, there are some towns in the east coast of Australia that got flooded 3 or 4 times in the last year, who are just going to have to move their whole town.
Yeah.
And that is a huge cost to those people and to those governments.
Yes, exactly. And it's who pays. I mean, that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day, isn't it? Who pays? And so those are they're very personal problems, aren't they? Because it's something which impacts all of us, because we all end up paying higher fees for insurances to spread the load.
Everybody pays in the end.
Exactly. So we all have a vested interest in those ones. So we've got some good things there. I mean, the thing with global refugees, that would be an interesting one to explore further, to see what's happening in Australia, and what our policies are, what's happening, and what can we expect. I noticed that they're continuing to open Nauru as well, aren't they? So I think that was announced the other day. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward. Anyway, some of the things that they had on one of the websites I had with currently manifesting risks: energy supply, cost of living, rising inflation, food supply, cyber attacks, disruptions in global supply chains, weaponization of economic policy. I'll pay this, and you can't import or export those things. Debt crises, failure to set and meet net zero targets, weakening of human rights, COVID, structural failures in health systems, deployment of chemical and biological weapons, deployment of nuclear weapons. So there's quite a lot of things in there, but we obviously can't save the whole world, so we'll focus on the bits that we can. But I think you've raised some really good ones there, and I think those areas would be quite good, just to sort of find out more about what can be done with regards to planning, so as we're not building in areas that are unsuitable, and what's happening in the area of refugees, and where we can see if we can actually use some of these issues to discuss them at the convention. So see what we can do. But anyway, any ideas for expanding on those topics, please email. Anyway,
Just
so-
on the point of refugees, people will know about Sister Works, or
Yes.
which we had at the last conference. Yesterday or the day before, I saw a brand new tram going along in Kew, and it had on the side Sister Works, and then I just read, and it said, employ refugee and migrant women.
Oh,
I saw that too. Right.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
Yes, excellent.
That sounds great. That sounds great. No, that's excellent. They did some great stuff. Now there's another hand up. Where's that? It's Kay.
Carol, just before we move on, this is a bit of a comeback down from the dreadful statistics on the global level, but you did mention in your introduction that, of course, every little helps, and everybody should be thinking about what they can do. The local council, which is both mine and Sandra's, has an excellent recycling program, and in their latest newsletter, which came out earlier this week, they've announced that they've reached zero carbon emissions.
Wow.
So that's pretty impressive, and I'm proud to live here.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And
Okay, is that Burundara?
Yes.
Yeah, they seem very good.
Yeah, excellent.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
That's excellent. So I just
can I just say, we've had quite a few weeks in South Australia where we have been net zero emissions for the entire state.
Wow.
And
We
we started
world,
a few months ago, it was a day, and then it was 2 days. And then a few weeks ago, they said, it was the whole week we went with zero net emissions.
Yeah,
so we're working on it, and we are positive, but there's a very long way to go.
Oh, yes. Well, the thing is, it shows it can be done, Jenny.
It can be done, exactly.
That's just interesting. And I think there's South Australia and Scotland, I think, are the two places in the world where you're leading the way in that space, which is fantastic. So what would you like to get from the think tank this year? Are you happy with having conversations like this today with occasional speakers and finding more about each other? Or is there any other particular thing you'd like to include or do? I want to make sure you get things out of this. Jenny, was your hand still up from before?
No, this is a new hand up. Having had just that discussion with Judy Gorton, I would like us to maybe have a session on what we can suggest to the convention committee around this stuff, to bring our ideas together, because we run a whole lot of sustainable and very efficient big events here in South Australia. WOMAD is the one that I'm thinking of in particular, and I would like our standards to be as good as WOMAD. No rubbish, no plastic, no this, no that. And I would like us to put together a document and give that to the convention committee and say, these are the standards we would love to see employed.
Excellent. Judy, is she still there? Judy, would you be happy with that?
Yes, of course. Yes. And I think that's what we're looking for, is something that, is quite positive in a way we can go and, thoughts and ideas of how we might approach that. So as I say, if we're doing really great things around our Australian states, here's an opportunity to showcase them. And, that's my whole focus.
Okay.
So, that would be great, Jenny.
Well, if we use the next meeting as the focus for this, and we can tic-tac with each other before that to develop some materials, and then we can discuss them at the next meeting.
That'd be great, Carol.
That sound good?
That sounds good. I think we get onto it sooner than later, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Jenny. Thank you, Jenny.
That's great. That's right then. So we'll focus on making sure that we're really prepared for convention as our major theme for this year. So whether it's trialing out things for workshops or speakers or documentation, we'll just do everything we can to support Judy.
Yeah, there's a lot of different topics there that could be tackled in relation to it.
Exactly. Fantastic. Love it.
And we're virtually having the convention starts on the 27th, and that whole day is basically workshops
Yeah.
You know, the convention website is being worked on right now. And there will be a schedule at a glance going up on the Zonta International Convention website under convention. So you'll be able to see that on the day of the 27th of June 2024 is devoted to all workshops. So a full day of workshops.
Right. A bit like Hamburg. That's good. Yeah, that worked out well. Excellent. Right. So international news, we've talked a bit about international stuff. Just to be aware with that, the halfway point for the Sendai framework, Australia's already done its report for that, so you can view it online. And with the Intercontinental Think Tank, we're actually looking at a new logo for Zonta Says Now, so as it doesn't get confused with Zonta Says No and sets us up for the future. The Zonta International are finalising some web pages. Some other documents are being developed. We've got a meeting next week, so just watch this space. Some things should start coming out soon. With district and club news, Emma Cutting was our winner of the Women Taking Climate Action Award. I'll just show this little video of what Emma does, so as you're aware.
Across Woolworths' own brand products, we've added loads of whole grains, removed tons of sugar and salt, and taken away an honour you'll love. Australia's healthiest supermarket own brands 4 years in a row.
Okay, we're fine now, I think.
I'm Emma Cutting, creator of the Heart Gardening Project. I live in South Melbourne with my husband and daughter. The Heart Gardening Project has grown out of my love of street gardening, my love for my daughter, who is growing up on a beautiful but dying planet, my love of life after overcoming 12 years of chronic fatigue syndrome, and the knowledge that in order for humans to survive as a species, nature can't be set apart from humans. Humans have to be a part of nature. The purpose of the Heart Gardening Project is to heal humankind by creating biodiversity in our cities. And the best place to start this is in the many under-maintained public spaces. The process of turning undernourished public spaces into thriving gardens is intensely satisfying. It fills a primal need to reconnect with one another while providing places for humans and nature to coexist safely and joyfully. Street gardening also addresses water retention issues, the heat island effect, the disappearance of wildlife habitat, and the pollination of all our backyard veggies. Turning spaces into wriggling, buzzing beauty is an untapped goldmine of positive change. The Heart Gardening Project creates street gardens in 3 ways. We support and encourage locals to create their own street gardens through consultation, information, and physical help. We inspire balance between planting familiar exotics and our beautiful Indigenous flora that is so intrinsically linked to our native fauna.
Emma walked past one day and saw it and thought, this person needs a bit of help. And so she came and we did a planting day, and so now it's mine to keep alive.
Secondly, we create gardens to help demonstrate how things can be done. The largest expression of this is the South Melbourne Bee Gardens. They are Australia's first public gardens dedicated to honeybees and native bees. We work with council to ensure we are compliant and with scientists and experts who assist us with plant choice and placement, soil health and knowledge around pollinators and bird life.
Bee gardens play this really critical role in a very urbanised setting, where they provide movement not just of the pollinators between parks, but actually of the plant genetics between otherwise quite disconnected plant communities.
Finally, the Heart Gardening Project connects people to community through the combination of street gardens and street art.
My favourite bug in the garden is the grasshoppers, and they jump so high, so that's why I like them.
Over the past year, we have created or helped create 27 street gardens and planted over 700 plants. We aim to create a further 100 street gardens, which will provide wildlife corridors that link larger green patches like Westgate Park and the Royal Botanic Gardens. Through our work,
I can see that awareness around the importance of street gardening is growing, and I'm so excited. The Heart Gardening Project is giving back to our generous planet, and, silent though it may be, I feel it receives our small but important efforts gratefully, and this makes me very happy.
So wasn't she amazing?
Yes.
I hasten to add that that video was done a year or so ago. She's created 70 street gardens and planted 7,000 plants and given away 600 pollinator plants to street gardeners so far. So it's just growing. And she's working on getting this pathway from the Melbourne pollinator corridor, so as the bees can travel all the way between the different parks. No, it's just wonderful. Sue?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this Melbourne pollinator corridor is actually very important. And if you kind of walk through the sort of few kilometres that it's supposed to be on, it is just going to be a huge change for Melbourne, and hopefully the start of something that other people will take on as well. And I mean, the fact that Emma was able to get places like the Botanic Gardens involved with her RMIT. There's a lot of scientists and people with a lot of plant knowledge out there who are saying that this is a really important thing to do. She actually has a walk on her site, which I'm going to do at some stage around some of her planting. So I'll give you a report back on that. We hope that, you know, she can continue to do this great work.
It's phenomenal. Amazing. She started off just with one of those little areas around a light post, which is just all sand, and just went from there. That's amazing leadership. So one other thing I was going to mention was it in our club in Perth, we have a recycling thing where we have our containers for change. We give money to plant trees, and we meet at St Catherine's College at University of Western Australia, and the college has just signed an agreement with the City of Perth, so all of their bottles for recycling and all their cans, all of the things will go to the Zonta Club of Perth's project. And they have a Golden Z Club at St Catherine's, and they want to highlight and spread the word about Zonta, and so it's a win-win. But St Catherine's College has recently opened a second college at the Curtin campus in Perth. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we may be able to extend it to Curtin in the future. So did you have other things that were happening in your clubs that you wanted to share?
Not around this, no.
That's fine.
We're exhausted after last year and Amelia Earhart Day. We had a very good combined Amelia Earhart Day.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great. Oh, it's good to know. There's so many things going on with Zonta. Sandra?
Yeah, just wanted to say we had a conference meeting for, remember the conference starting on the 1st of September this year, and we're going to have we talked about some great young speakers that are in Western Australia, and we're going to be able to use Joe and the other team members there have been very active in getting all these names to us. And one of them, of course, was fitting in with that heart gardening project that Joe was speaking about, a young woman who we hope might speak to us about how we can help to change the planet just within our backyards, and what effect that will have. But we've got some ideas for great young people. We're hoping that the Golden Zeds will come down and talk about what they're doing with the project with the Zonta Club of Perth. We're going to try and engage with the Z clubs and get them along and have a panel with them and some of our young professionals in Zonta to talk about where they see the future. But we're really concentrating on what the future will look like and speakers to do that. We're not expecting to have the registration out until about May. So we're putting out a newsletter in March, because the district's putting out a newsletter, Kay said next week, and I have to get her some information, so I better get my skates on. Did you want to add something to that, Kay?
No, Sandra, I think you've covered it very well. Thank you.
That's great. That's good. Lots to look forward to. So when it's other business, for those of you who had bought tickets for the 1 Million Women Polestar car raffle, it's been drawn, and someone called Leonie Lane won it. So blast. Try again next year, Carol.
Yes. Try again.
And again. And in keeping with what doing, the Climate Council's latest petition is calling on the federal government to quit paying billions of tax dollars each year to the fossil fuel companies that drive the climate crisis, and instead to create a climate disaster fund to protect communities properly and better resource emergency services. So if you wanted to add your name to that petition, the link's there. They also highlight some sources for information which they think are pretty good on climate, energy and extreme weather. Obviously the ABC, Bureau of Meteorology, CSIRO, and I'm not sure if any of you have come across Renew Energy before.
Economy?
Yeah, Renew Energy is one that has a number of different things. It gives you all the information on solar, all the on renewable energies, but they also have secondary sites, which is one step off the grid, the driven, and various multimedia things. So it's a really good site for accessing a lot of information. You can subscribe to news feeds which can come daily or weekly, whatever you want. So it's just something to be aware of. So I used to live on those sites. But
just to finish off, Carol, I want to say in our building here where I live in Kew, they didn't actually have places for plugging in electric cars. They did a survey later last year, and all the buyers within, all the people within our building wanted put into the building, and it's going to happen. Like there's no dissension, everybody, yeah.
That's good, that's good.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things to consider when you're putting in EV chargers underground and things as well. So that's really good. That's really good news, finding ways to overcome them. So again, to reiterate, we're coming up to Zonta Rose Day and things. So be aware if you want to make a donation to the endowment fund or Zonta International, please do. And our next meeting, I've penciled in the 15th of April. Does that clash with anything, Kay? It doesn't clash with an area workshop anywhere, does it? Sorry, Kay, you're on mute. I just thought I did just do a quick double check.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, good. I've avoided Easter, which is about the 9th of April. So it gives us a bit of time before that. Okay.
And Carol, I think somewhere along the line you said 3 p.m. for Tasmania, because it might be an earlier start.
Yeah, I'll double check the figures and write the times on the notes. So
yeah, that'll be lovely. Thank you.
And include with notes. Yeah. Right. Excellent. That's excellent. And I think that's it for today. Yes, that's it for today. So is there anything else that anyone would like to raise, or are you complete, as they say? Oh, I see that Joe's made a mention here that Deakin University have developed a sustainable and highly lucrative way to address reclaiming elements from end-of-life solar panels and refiguring it to build better batteries. That's great news. Sue?
I saw in the media that you've started the rollout of your places for EVs to charge in Western Australia. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it's been going behind the scenes for a while. It's amazing how difficult it is to get them rolled out in country areas. Because in places like Fitzroy Crossing, charging one EV takes more power than the rest of the town. So
yes, a few logistical issues and all the cane toads. Oh God.
Well, thank you all for your contribution today. It's been a really good meeting. I've really enjoyed it, and and we'll look forward to being in touch in between meetings. I didn't do a newsletter for February or December. I think I might pull back from the newsletters. I don't know if we're getting as much out of them, and I think it's more important that in these think tank meetings we can discuss our issues there. So we'll do that little change.
Yeah.
Thank you all for today, and I look forward to seeing you at the April meeting.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
Bye.
Bye, Carol. Thanks.
Bye.